What's going on, my babies? Welcome back to another episode of Can of Heaven. As always, I apologize for any noises in the background and anything of that nature in advance. And as always, I like to start these off with a disclaimer by stating that these are for entertainment purposes only and to always do your own research, to come to your own conclusions, and I believe in your ability to be your own person. So with that being said, I'm just going to jump right into today's episode. And what I wanted to talk about in today's episode is basically understanding your own thoughts and how to get to that place of understanding your own thoughts. And before I start, I want to say that I upload Mondays and Fridays at 8 p.m. Mountain Time. And yeah, let's get right into this. So, how to understand your own thoughts. It takes a lot of understanding and awareness of your situation and your circumstances. Like, for example, when you're having really negative thoughts about the way that other people think about you, that is because you're in their shoes trying to perceive yourself, but only they have a perception of you. So regardless of what you're thinking about that they might be thinking about you, that has nothing to do with you. And even if your perception of yourself through their lens is right, it doesn't mean that it's something that you should be doing, only for the reasons that it makes you more unhappy to be sitting in someone else's shoes, especially when they don't like you, or like just having really negative self-talk through another person's lens. And I found that most people, when they have really negative self-talk, they perceive themselves through other people's lenses, and they perceive that as their own thoughts. And so they claim that those are their own thoughts. And when the spiritual community talks about taking other people's energy and using it as your own, they mean that the thoughts that you have is your energy. So when you're in this mindset of using negative perception, you're in a negative vibration. So when you take on other people's perceptions, or you take on other people's energy, or other people are taking energy from you, that is because you're perceiving yourself through their lens, and you don't understand that concept, right? And so, how to understand your thoughts. To understand your thoughts, all it takes is you looking through your personal lens. And I was thinking about this a lot just because I was somebody who was perceiving myself through other people's lenses for a long time, because I'm like a chronic people pleaser. I want everybody in the room to be happy, even if it's at my own downfall. And even if those people are using me, even if those people are, just not being the best humans, I wanted them to be happy regardless of whether or not it made me happy. And I was thinking about this because I have certain people on my social media that I want to block because I don't want them to see my content, because I have a tendency to want to direct my content towards them. And my content, sorry about that, my content has nothing to do with those people. And for me, my way of taking on other people's energy is by being like, okay, if this person was watching, what could I not say? Because I'd have to be conscious of what they are going to say, regardless of actually being myself and being authentic. And that's usually the only reason that people are not authentic, and that people are fake, and that people want to fit in. It's for the reason that they're looking at themselves through another person's lens. They're saying, okay, this person's watching, so what could I do that will make this person like me? Or what could I do so that this person doesn't not like me? Or what could I do to piss this person off because I don't like this person? And shit like that. And so I don't want my content to have anything to do with anybody else. And I was thinking about this heavily because I have a tendency to people please. So to understand your own thoughts, it's really about you determining whether or not those are really your thoughts. And it doesn't take like a heavy contemplation. If you are negatively judging yourself, most likely it's not your thought. Because usually we don't have negative thoughts about ourselves when we're children. That develops over time, that develops over trauma, that develops with your personality developing. And so when you really have to, and you really have to acknowledge the fact that you don't really control your thoughts, in a sense. And the reason I say you don't control your thoughts is because thoughts are like the ether. I am not in control of this piece of ether. And what is ether? Ether is literal space and time. I don't control this piece of space and time, although I can claim it to be my own because I'm holding it, but it doesn't really mean that I'm holding it because I can put my hands here, but what I'm holding is nothing. So you have to recognize that your thoughts are really emptiness until you grab something. And when you grab something, it doesn't mean that it's your own because somebody else could grab the exact same thought. And it's not original, it's not yours, it's not real. So you need to not identify with those thoughts. And most of the time, people who have negative self-talk or negative self-belief or are really depressed or are really anxious, they usually take these thoughts and they run with them. They say, this is my thought. And the way that that person is perceiving me all the way over there, that's also my thought. Because I picked it up. Because I know what they're going to say. Because I already know. Because it's my thought. Because I know. And truthfully, we don't know anything. As human beings, we really don't know anything. Like, yeah, we have a certain grasp about, like, how to drive, right? Or we have a certain grasp about how to do our job. Or how to live our life, right? But that doesn't mean that everybody knows anything. Because the way that I do my job is different from the way that you are going to do your job. Even if we have the exact same job. Even if our job is to open doors for people. The way that you open a door might not be the same way I open a door. Even though opening a door is the most basic thing ever. The way that I hold my pencil is not the same way you hold your pencil. So you really have to acknowledge that fact. And to have control over your thoughts, you have to acknowledge the fact that they're not really yours. And it takes a lot of courage to sit there and be like, this is not my thought. And for a lot of people, that's going to be really, really hard. For the only purpose that you hold on to these things that you so intensely want to let go of. And it's weird because as human beings, we say, well, I don't want this in my life. But you're holding on to it with the tightest grip possible. So instead of letting it go and say, you know what, I don't want this. You say, I don't want this. But instead, you're holding on to this thing. And what is that? That could be any fucking thing. That could be your thoughts, your emotions, the trauma that you experienced as a kid. That could be anything. And we claim that to be our own, even though our experiences are technically our experiences. It doesn't mean that, like, for example, I'm not the same person I was when I came out of the womb. I'm not the same person I was 2 years ago. I'm not the same person I was 3 months ago. And for a lot of us, we take something that belonged to us a long time ago and we say, well, this is me. If I used to be a kid that would just cause a bunch of trouble when I was in high school, that doesn't mean that now as an adult, I'm that same person. And when you're not able to let go of those ideas and those concepts, it holds back a lot inside of you because you are not maturing, you're not growing, you're not developing the way that a person should develop. You should be developing your whole life, regardless of how much science tells you, well, you stop learning, your ability to learn slows down as soon as you hit this age. You shouldn't cap your own capacity. You shouldn't put a cap onto your own ability to do things because you think that it's impossible, or because science tells you that it's wrong, or because other people are telling you shouldn't do that, why are you doing that? Or because you tell that to yourself and you claim that to be your own thought. Most of the time when we don't like ourselves is because we are looking at ourselves through another person's lens. We make mistakes. As people, that's what we do. That is our job. Our job is to not be perfect. Because if we were perfect, we'd live in an idealistic world. If we were all perfect, everything would be perfect. And because we're not perfect, we hold on to this idea that we need to be perfect. Or that we are absolute trash. And because of that reason, you're not able to let things go. And when you want to control your thoughts, you need to learn how to let things go. And trust me, I know that that's fucking hard. I know because it's really hard for me to not get annoyed or pissed off at certain people or certain ideas because of the shit that I'm holding on to. Like, I look at people who use sexual wording or sexual content and they run with that because they're like, oh, this is funny and this is relatable. And yeah, it is relatable, yeah, it is funny, but at the same time, there's people and children that will be watching you, and that probably are watching you, and that probably look up to you. So why would you put an idea out there if the idea that you're putting out there is controversial to the person you say you are? Like, for example, there's a lot of spiritual dudes on the internet who claim that, you should treat your woman like a princess and this and that, but their vocabulary and the way that they talk about women is very contradictory, or like counterintuitive to what they're even explaining. Like, it's kind of like me saying, well, if you want to control your thoughts, you need to give a shit about what other people think. Like, that's not going to help you at all. And if anything, that makes all of the things that I'm saying very invalid, very not true. Which I can give that credit, because everything is true, but it's only if you identify with that, right? And because men are more animalistic than women, meaning men use and run with their body functions more than women do, because women are more thought-centered, they're more heart-centered than men are. So of course, when I see stuff like that, it annoys the shit out of me, and it's really hard to not get annoyed at. But when I look at those, I have to see the truth, right? See the truth in what is being explained or expressed. They are living their truth, even if their truth is not true for me. And so I learned to let those things go. I learned to stop letting people bother me. Like, now, I've been getting to this place in me controlling my own thoughts and letting things go, to the point to where certain people who used to piss me off to my core, who I would want to physically, hit, I've gotten to a place where now their words mean nothing. And now they don't affect me at all. And now I get to a place where instead of them annoying me, I can sit there and be like, okay, good for you. I don't know what you want me to say. I really am unbothered. I'm unfazed. I don't know why you're still here. And it bothers those people because now I'm not bothered. And I've also realized that when you don't take on an energy, it has to go somewhere else. Because we're humans and because that's what we do, right? When that person over there doesn't like me, it's either I accept that and let it go, or I hold on to it. And when I accept it and let it go, they hold on to it, because it's not my energy. Because we as human beings want to grab onto something that's real, even though nothing's real. And we are hungry and we crave something that really means something. But the only thing that's going to mean something is the things that you attach yourself to. Like, if you attach yourself to being a good person, if you attach yourself to loving yourself, if you attach yourself to caring about the things that you really should care about, and caring about being a good person, because the only things that are going to affect other people is your actions, is your words, is what you put out into the world. So what you should put out into the world is good. And sometimes we do good things without realizing we do good things, and sometimes we do bad things without realizing that they're bad things. But it doesn't make you a bad person. And that's something that I really, really had to learn through controlling my thoughts, because when I was watching these spiritual dudes talk about these women in really sexual and objectified ways, it pissed me off. And the only reason that it pissed me off was because I was perceiving them through people who had that trauma. The trauma of being abused, the trauma of being objectified, the trauma of being a woman. I was identifying with this body to the core, to the fact that I'm a woman. You should not talk about other women like that. Because if they're not going to say something, I'm going to say something. But instead of just letting it go, he's a man. He's going to do what men do, because he's identifying with a male body. So why do I care so much about being in a woman's body? Because of trauma, because of ideas, because of beliefs, because of what? I have no reason to let that thing affect me. And when you let those things go, it changes your whole mentality. It changes your vibration. It changes your energy. Why? Because your energy is what you're thinking about. Your energy is how you move through your thoughts, because that's what we do as human beings. If I think that I'm right for opening a door the way that I open a door, then I'm gonna always open the door like that, regardless of what you tell me to do, regardless of what I tell myself to do in that moment, because I'm so used to it. It's something that I've just learned to be a machine to. And the world is literal computer code. And if it wasn't, we wouldn't be able to have phones. We wouldn't be able to have computers. We wouldn't be able to have these machines because these machines are our ideas. They're not, a dog's idea. And a dog's idea would probably have the same thing because we all have blood, we all have organs, we all have brains. And what is a brain? It's like a motherboard to a computer. It's the brain of the computer. And so you have to really piece together all these things that you otherwise wouldn't piece together because you're holding on to this idea that I am this person, I've had these things happen to me, that person probably doesn't like me, that person over there is thinking something about me that maybe I don't identify with. And they're going to judge me. The only person that's sitting here judging you is yourself. And another way to control your thoughts is to really forgive yourself. Forgive yourself because as people, we're not perfect. And we make mistakes. And we're not ever going to have it all figured out. Even old people make mistakes. This is something that really got to me because I am a foodie. I am a food junkie. I literally have food after this episode. So believe me when I say that this hit me. And I guess we're all food junkies if you really think about it because we all need to eat. But anyways, I digress. So I was talking to one of my friends, and this particular friend I see as wise, right? That's one of the thoughts that I grab, that I hold on to, that I'm like, I identify this thing with this person. And this person to me is wise. And one time I was telling her about how I'm not good at certain things that I wish I was super good at. And why can't I just speed up time to be good at this right here, right now? Because that would make my life so much easier. You know what I mean? Like, if I was a genius, I'd know how to just, do anything. And what this person told me was, you could be an expert at something and still make mistakes. Just look at the way that we eat. I could still bite my cheek on accident, even though I have years and years and years and years and years and years of experience. And this person's in their 30s, and they told me, I'm 30. I still bite my cheek when I eat. After 30 years of eating, I still bite my cheek. And I eat every day, at least 3 times. And for me, that really, really hit me because I was like, wow, you were really right. I could be an expert at something and still make the most basic mistakes. For example, there's a lot of things that I could see that are false in my own episode today. And that has nothing to do with me. You know what I mean? Like, it has something to do with me, yeah, but also has nothing to do with me. And I can't blame myself for all the mistakes that I'm ever going to make, and I can't blame other people for the mistakes that they're going to make. And I have to learn to let things go because life is really short. And what I want to take away from my day is to make a positive impact, even if what I was trying to do doesn't come out the way that I'm trying it to do. You know what I mean? Like, that sounded really weird. Let me reword that. What I want to get out of today is to make a positive impact on somebody, even if the things that I'm saying are not necessarily positive, or that they don't necessarily help some particular person that I don't know. And because of that reason, I'm doing that thing. Like, I'm fulfilling my own thoughts. I'm fulfilling my own needs. I'm fulfilling my own wants. Because that's just a thought that I have. I think that I want this thing, even if life doesn't have that in store for me. And if life doesn't have that in store for me, then I have to learn to be okay with that and let it go. And so really, how to control your thoughts, I'm going to condense it into this tiny, amount of time for the basic understanding of what you really need to do. 1, care about the things that you're thinking about. What are you thinking about? Are you thinking positive about yourself, or are you thinking negative about yourself? And you should always think positive about yourself, because the more positive that you think about something, the more likely you are to do that thing again. And if you're thinking positively about yourself, the more likely you're going to get yourself to think more positively again. And again, and again, and again, and again. And it will snowball effect into thinking positively about other people, even if other people are absolute dog shit. Even if those people are Hitler. You know what I mean? And then you'll get, just having positive thoughts about people puts you in a state where you're like, okay, I don't need to judge people, and people will feel safe around me. And I know that to be true because people feel safe around me. And it's for the reason that I don't judge them, because I know that I'm a piece of shit. I don't judge anybody on the internet because I know that I'm a piece of shit. And what I'm doing is trying to be a better person every single day. And I'm not going to sit here and believe that I'm a piece of shit for the sake of believing that I'm a piece of shit. I'll say that, but I say it with a grain of salt, because I know that I really do love myself and I try. And what matters in life is trying. Number 2, try. All you have to do is try. Because if you're trying at something, you are succeeding. Why? Because most people give up at the thought. Most people say, well, that person will never like me, so why bother? You're right, that person will never like you. So why don't you try to be happy with yourself? People who have anxiety or depression are like, I try to be happy, but it just doesn't work. Are you continuously showing up for yourself and trying 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 and trying, even if it never works out for you? Even if it never happens, because you're not going to ever get fixed. You're not broken, you're not going to get fixed. You are made the way you're made, and that's how it is. And although that's a really hard truth, it is what it is. You know what I mean? Like, I can't change my skin color. And for that fact that I can't change my skin color, I'm not going to sit here and hate myself for trying to change my skin color and it not working. I don't have to sit here and try to change my skin color. I am perfect the way I am. I just need to be okay with it. And my 3rd tip is to be okay with those things that you are not okay with. Because those thoughts are not your thoughts. And the things that really help you control your thoughts is just being okay with those things that you're not okay with. And when you're trying, it means you'll go further, even though you're okay with the things that you're okay with. It doesn't mean you're complacent. It doesn't mean that you're just going to sit there and take the beating. It means that you're going to get up every time that you get beat. Why? Because you're trying. It doesn't mean that you have to be a pro boxer. But if you try, slowly over time you will get to a really good level. And probably be better than most. And practice is what makes perfect. You just have to try. That's it. Care about what you're thinking. Try. And what was the last one? I literally just said it. You remember the last one, so. Anyways, my 4th tip is to recognize when your thoughts are not your own. And it's not some complicated ass idea, but it is complicated when you're in this state of being where you're picking up everybody's thoughts. Like, you're worried about what your parents are going to say, you're worried about what your friends are going to say, you're worried about what your family is going to say, you're worried about what the people next door to you are going to say. When you're worried about what everybody else is thinking, you pick up on their perception of you, or what you idealize as their perception, even if what you idealize is them hating you or them loving you. Either way, it doesn't really help you, because that has nothing to do with you. And my last and final tip for how to really get into control with your thoughts is to not put so much emotion behind them unless they're yours. And the reason I say that is because you'll live authentically when you run with your emotions rather than to run with other people's perception of you and then run with those emotions. Like, if I'm thinking that you're a piece of garbage and you're looking at yourself through my lens, you're going to feel bad about yourself. Why? Because you're looking at yourself through my lens and claiming it to be yours. and using those emotions, rather than to actually be like, okay, what do I think about myself right here, right now? I don't think that I'm like the bottom of the barrel, but I do think that I could be doing better. So what are ways that I can get myself to actually do better? And that way you don't feel like shit when you have perceptions that are not yours. Or even if you're like, oh, that person over there likes me. That's a good perception, right? When people like you. But it doesn't mean it's something that you're going to want all the time. And so for that reason, you can't just sit there and be like, oh my god, that person likes me. Maybe I should go, talk to them and see why they like me. And maybe I'll end up liking them. And sometimes because we take on other people's emotions and we take on other people's perceptions and claim it to be our own, sometimes you get into relationships that you don't even like. Why? Because that person liked you. So in return, you're like, wow, that person likes me. So I'm going to take their thoughts and they're going to be my own. So I like this person. And as people, we do that a lot. Like, most of the time and I don't say that for everybody, right? Because obviously there's people out there who don't claim other people's emotions. But for example, when you're in middle school and somebody likes you, normally you're like, oh, that's fun. That's cool. You know what I mean? Like, those emotions arise and you're like, oh my gosh, that's so fun. Like, this person likes me, but do I like them back? You don't really sit there and think about it and really, really perceive them. You're just kind of like, maybe I do. Maybe I do because it's easy. And because it's like a given. Like, if somebody gives you a soda and it's not your preferred flavor, you probably wouldn't take it, right? But it's easy to be like, I want a soda, and somebody gives you a soda, regardless of the flavor, you don't look and you just grab it. That's what people who don't control their thoughts, that's what they're doing. They say, okay, I'm just gonna dip my hand blindly in this bag, and whatever I get is what I get. We don't physically see the thoughts that are in the ether, right? We think them. And thinking about it is really trippy. But you don't really see them unless you think in pictures, right? Because then you do see them. But even when you do think in pictures, you don't necessarily control the pictures that pop up into your head, especially when you're running with other people's perceptions of you. And so for that reason, you really need to be conscious of it. And that's my last tip. My sixth tip is to be conscious of what you're choosing to think about. Be conscious about what you're choosing to think about, because believe it or not, you do have control over your thoughts, even when you have depression, even when you have anxiety. Because you could sit there and be like, oh my god, I'm really, really, really anxious right now, but I'm not going to choose that thought. I'm going to consciously do my best to sit here. This is why I have this bracelet. When I have a moment of anxiety, I sit here and I say one thing repeatedly. Like, when I'm in waiting areas at the doctors, or when I'm waiting for, I don't know, a job interview, or when I'm waiting at the DMV and I feel like all these people are staring at me. I sit there and I'm like, I have my own phrase because, I am my own person. But what I sit here and say is, I'm a bodhisattva. And what is that? It's a soul. It's not a soul, but it's a consciousness that chooses to reincarnate for the purpose of helping other people. So I sit here and I say, instead of being anxious, instead of picking that thought up, I'm going to sit here and say, I'm a bodhisattva. 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 And go through this whole bracelet, one bead at a time. And I do that 4 times. And then I choose a different thought. I say, okay, what do I want to think about now? Sometimes I'll use this for manifestation. If I'm anxious, I'll use that anxious feeling to my advantage and say, okay, what do I need right now? Why am I anxious right now? Am I anxious because I need money? Am I anxious because I don't have this thing? Am I anxious because I want a car? Am I anxious because I need to pay this bill? What is it? And I would sit there and be like, okay, I want to manifest a car. So let's say I have a car, 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 I have a car. And then after doing that 4 times completely through the whole bracelet, I feel a lot better, even though I don't have a car. And so you really just, you have to be conscious of the things you're thinking. And if this stuff helps you, then use it to your advantage. And you don't need a bracelet to help you, right? You could just sit there and do it in your head and be like, okay, I'm a bodhisattva, I'm a bodhisattva, I'm a bodhisattva, I'm a bodhisattva. And it doesn't have to be something that's like, you need this thing to help you with this thing, because that's consumer culture. And that's not what I'm pushing. You know what I mean? So do what you can with the tools that you have. And what you do have is your brain all the time. So you can use that. Anyways, with that being said, I'm gonna end this here because this already went over time by 5 minutes. So yeah, I hope that this was helpful in any way, shape, and form. Always take my ideas, my opinions, and my thoughts with a grain of salt. And with that being said, thanks for tuning in and tapping into A Can of Heaven. I upload Mondays and Fridays at 8 p.m. Mountain Time. And I will see you in the next one. Peace.